Before the match could begin, the Tiophianiar produced a disc for each of them. Jonathan took his, puzzled by the saucer-sized stone with Tiophianiar symbols on it. This is an armor disc. When on your person, it will reduce the impact of incoming blows. Instead of taking the full hit, the disc will absorb the blow. We use these for practice bouts and in battle. Looking down, Jonathan noticed another pocket sewn into his shirt that was just big enough for the disc. He placed it down into the pocket, then looked up to see Asek doing the same. They stood roughly 20 feet apart. Both combatants had a barrel of water nearby to use. 10 feet behind them, a line had been drawn in the dirt. First one to get pushed over this line loses, During called. Ready, Asek. Ready, Tiophianiar? Asek was excited, ready for the bout to begin. Ready, Jonathan. Ready. The apprentice was excited as well, but also nervous. He hadn't even been here a week, and he was being pitted against a bridge guardian. Asek and his family were all shapeshifters as well as expert warriors. Their role was to ensure that anyone who was not welcome in Tiophianiar did not make it far past the bridge. In more severe cases, this meant ending the person's life. Not only was Asek a bridge guardian, but his official title was Keeper of the Bridge. A title, Jonathan had been told, had been earned from his undying loyalty to his nation as well as his combat prowess. In short, despite his cheery demeanor, he was no pushover. Begin. Asek swirled his hand and a large stream of water came from the barrel and came to rest over his head. He began to chant to himself, and balls of water the size of bowling balls started shooting from the stream. Jonathan ducked, dodged, and weaved as the water flew at him, making sure not to break the boundaries of his own box. In addition to the line behind him, there were 3 more lines defining a 5x5 box. If he overstepped any boundary, the match was over. He gained confidence as the bridge guardian continued his attack. This is just like dodgeball, he thought to himself. His skinny frame and speed had made him a difficult target back in school. Here was no different. After a minute or so of dodging, he went on the attack. As a sphere of water came at him, he used his magic to snatch it out of the air. It felt as if he had caught it in his hand, the force of the incoming sphere pushing at him. This was another side effect of magic recoil that During had explained to him. When a person tries to affect an element, the force being applied to the object is applied to the user, as if they are grabbing a hold of said object. He spun it around his body to keep its momentum and sent it back at Asek. The Tiophianiar ducked the projectile and kept sending the barrage at him. Jonathan continued his pattern, reaching up with his hand to guide the balls to launch back at his target. Asek was a skilled opponent and continued to duck and dodge the water with ease. Jonathan decided to change tack in the hope of catching him napping, using the other element that was allowed in the match. After launching another orb of water, he quickly mimed jabs that sent condensed air forward. Distracted with dodging the water, the shapeshifter sensed the air coming too late and staggered with the first few impacts. Only falling back a few steps, Asek pushed his hands forward, screaming out a chant as he did so. His glowing green eyes seemed to pulse with energy. A solid wind washed over the apprentice, causing him to fall on his back. Close to the line now, he stood and moved forward. He decided that he should use his own water and send a rush of it towards Asek. Sadly for him, all he appeared to have done was give him more ammunition. The guardian took over the torrent and swirled it around himself, sending out a large glob of it back at Jonathan. In a desperate attempt to keep from being knocked back, he threw himself to the ground. The deluge soaked the ground, and the Tiophianiar now realized that the ground was muddy from all the water. Maybe that's the idea, he thought. If the ground's all muddy, it'll be harder to keep my footing. He didn't have time to dwell on it. More water was on its way, and he would need to keep his head in the game. Asek was changing up his tactics by sending rectangular sheets at him, forcing him to put in more effort as he ducked and jumped over the large obstacles. Occasionally he had to lie completely flat in a desperate attempt to avoid the barrage. As he did so, he gathered more water and mud, causing him to become heavier and slower. His energy reserves were getting low. Surely Asek has to be getting tired as well, he thought. If he was, it didn't seem to slow him down any. The onslaught continued, and time seemed to slow for Jonathan as fatigue set in. He sucked in lungfuls of air, trying to replenish his weary body. There was a burning in his gut from the effort of moving the water back and forth. Finally, when he thought it would never end, Asek let the water drop and held out his hands as if to clap. Instead of celebrating his own inevitable victory, however, he slowly brought his hands together and chanted. Suddenly the ground around Jonathan froze with a thin yet sturdy layer of ice. Caught off guard, he slipped, landing hard on the ground. He looked up in horror as he saw a rush of water headed straight for him. Instinctively, he threw out his hand to divert the water. It was a mistake. As he diverted the water up and over him, the magic recoil sent him skidding across the ice and over the line. He groaned as he saw his defeat. Then he gasped as the previously diverted water came right on top of him. Unable to move in time, the water smacked him right in the face, forcing his head onto the ground. Sputtering, he sat up and coughed up a mouthful of water. Match. The single word confirmed the end of the bout. Jonathan sat in the mud, trying to catch his breath. He looked up to see his opponent extending out a hand to help him to his feet. Well fought. Asek's sincere face grinned down at him. Jonathan reached up with his own hand, but failed to keep the devious smirk from coming to his lips. Seeing the look, the Tiophianiar tried to pull away. Quickly, the apprentice grabbed his hand and pushed. As he did this, his eyes sparkled green, and he moved his other hand, causing the mud under the guardian's feet to sweep out from under him. Off balance, Asek fell backwards onto his backside. Landing perfectly in a mud puddle, he sent a small splash up as he plopped down. Bewildered, he stood up to examine the smear of mud dragging on his robe. He looked back at Jonathan, then they both burst into laughter. They both stood, smiling at each other when Durin walked over, nodding his head in disapproval. Now, that was not very sportsmanlike of you. Jonathan turned red with embarrassment. He went to reply but was beaten to it. I'm sorry. Asek slumped his shoulders in shame. The Tiophianiar put his hands on his hips and huffed. Not you. Him. It was their turn to burst into laughter, and Jonathan was left confused as Asek rubbed tears of mirth from his eyes. Durin patted his Tiophianiar on the shoulder. Sorry. It is an inside joke. I will tell you more about it when we eat tonight. Before we do, it seems that you both may wish to bathe and change. Jonathan looked down at his mud-smeared uniform. He looked up to see his uncle and cousin grinning like idiots. That would be for the best. With a wet plop, he shoved a pile of mud off of his shirt, then squelched his way over to his family. You look like a drowned rat. A cheeky smile played across Galdo's lips. Jonathan gave him a playful punch on the shoulder. Nothing a shower can't fix, but sadly, I can't say the same for you. He smiled to show he was joking. You did well. We're proud of you. Magnus patted him on the shoulder, and Jonathan flushed with pride as he thanked him. Well, you better get as much mud off you as possible. You don't want to go back to the inn and muck it all up. Jonathan used the remaining water to rinse a thorough amount of the mud from his clothes, then conjured a breeze to air dry himself. After that, he trekked back into town to the inn. Once there, he showered, changed, and readied himself to eat. Wicked, wicked witch of the west. I shouldn't have done that. My throat's going to be messed up. Oh my lord. She went outside, I can still hear. Asek slumped his shoulders and